I saw Hazel on Tinder. Her profile was in a league of its own. Her pictures were beyond perfection. Her profile bio talking about her previous experience working in bars and studying painting at Wisconsin College. She was beautiful. I swiped yes, hoping it would match us. And it did. I couldn't believe my luck. I wanted to keep it cool, so I didn't message her too quickly. After an entire day, I said, "Hey." No reply came. I started to panic. Shit, I must have messed it up. I went through all the possible ways I could have ruined this. Hey, should I have said hi? Sup? Too late now. An hour passed. My phone vibrated. A Tinder notification from Hazel. Hey. Success. Thus, we began talking, discussing our hobbies, interests, previous relationships, the lot. After a few days of talking, I felt like I knew this girl inside and out. Her parents had separated, and she lived with her dad, taking on 2 jobs to support herself and him. She was a Leo, so was I. It was going great. It got to the point where one night I texted her, "Any chance we could meet up at some point? Get a drink or a coffee?" "Sure." My heart raced. I didn't think she would have said yes. We exchanged numbers and continued texting for a while, arranging to meet at Mighty Night, a cocktail bar in Wisconsin. 8 p.m. that night, I got off the bus and started walking towards the bar, my heart beating and palms beginning to sweat. What if she thought I was ugly? I kept thinking. I approached the entrance of the bar, arranging to meet her here before we went in. This is where it got weird. She didn't text me much that day, just short sentences and long amounts of time between responses. I just assumed she was nervous. As I waited outside the bar, suddenly my phone vibrated. It was a text from Hazel. "Babe, I just walked past you. You're so much more beautiful in person. I was too nervous to say hi. Please forgive me." I looked up from the phone and scanned the street around me. Just a few students and some elderly people coming home from the theater. "Where are you? I want to meet you," I texted. No response. I texted again. "You winding me up? LOL." And still nothing. Maybe I got catfished. I mean, this girl couldn't possibly be intimidated by me. She was too attractive to be. My phone bleeped. "Please forgive me." Now I was starting to get pretty creeped out. The combination of the darkness and the lack of people in the streets didn't help. I kept looking around to try and see her. Then, out of the corner of my eye, on the other side of the road and further down the street, a silhouette of someone standing, facing me. It was too dark to make out any features of the person. I just noticed a long black jacket with the hood up. It couldn't have been her. I slowly reached into my pocket and sent her a blank text. My gaze still firmly on this figure. A phone lit up in its hand. "Screw this," I said to myself and started walking the other way. A quick text popped up. "Why are you walking away? Am I not pretty?" That was it for me. I knew I had been played. I felt like a complete idiot. All I could think about was getting back home and forgetting this ever happened. Another text came. "I am a pretty girl. You will see." That made my skin crawl. I refused to respond to it. All I could picture was some strange woman texting me now. The aura of Hazel was instantly gone. The whole way home, I felt like I was being followed. I don't know if it was just my paranoia or if someone was. Either way, I had to get home. I lunged through the front door, locking it and checking all the windows and back doors were locked. I needed to get some sleep. It took me a while to drift off, my mind still replaying that figure standing there. 4 a.m., I awoke to the vibration of my phone, the immediate brightness blurring my vision. As my eyes adjusted to the screen, I looked at the notification. It was her again, Hazel. My blood froze. I opened the message. It took me a second to process what I was looking at. It was a picture message from Hazel. My blood went cold. On my screen was a picture of my bedroom from the door. I can see myself sleeping on the very bed I'm laying on now. Written under the photo was a message. "Hello, my sleeping beauty." My eyes quickly looked at the bedroom door, which was now open wide. I remembered very well that I closed it before going to bed. The light from the hall had illuminated part of my room. I sat up in my bed almost instantly, head now facing the door. The hair on the back of my neck stood up when I saw a black shadow in my room at the end of the hallway. Each second, my heart beat twice. Slowly, a man in a dirty, ripped, knee-length pink dress came out from the dark and stood right opposite to me. A 5-foot, extremely elderly, bit overweight guy wearing a blonde wig and what I could make out to be pink eyeshadow and red lipstick. His eyes were wide and fixated on me. The room was silent, and all I could hear was his heavy breathing. I looked in horror at this figure standing not 5 meters away from me. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just sat there on my bed in complete terror. The man took a step forward, so he was in better vision, his drooling mouth shaped into an abnormally large cartoon smile. "Don't you think I'm pretty?" he said in a hoarse voice. His mouth started grinning. Words tried forming in my head, but none of them would come out. I couldn't speak or move. My heart was going into overload. Who are you?" I could hear the fear in my voice. I couldn't think properly. My legs were numb. The figure just stood there, eyes penetrating my soul. His smile grew larger, saliva dripping down his smudged lipstick. "I'm Hazel, and I'm a pretty girl." My body started trembling in fear. I had no idea if the man was unarmed or not. I realized it was me versus him now. No one was coming to save me until I call the cops. My house is on the outskirts of the city. There's nothing but paddy fields and cow farms, and the 3 to 4 kilometers stretch around my house. That was the first time I regretted not living in a crowded neighborhood. "You didn't answer my question. Am I not pretty?" "Look, please. It was all a misunderstanding. You need to leave." "Or else what? You won't kiss me?" "I'm warning you, for the last time. Get out of my house, or I'm calling the cops." "And how would you call them, using your girly voice?" The man slowly lifted his hand, and I saw a screwdriver in his hand. I realized that this is his choice of weapon, because the tool didn't belong to me. He brought it himself. The man licked his lips from left to right, and then again from right to left, and then held the screwdriver up and started licking it from the bottom to the top in a very vulgar manner. I've never felt so gross in my entire life. He then started to come to my bed while laughing like a mentally disabled person. "I like you. Let me love you. Then you will like me too. I promise, Jonathan. Just let me love you. We can enjoy the whole night together, doing all kinds of naughty things to each other." He then jumped on my bed to grab me with his filthy hands, but I was prepared. I jumped and got out of my bed and ran out of my room. He couldn't catch me, but started chasing me while cursing at me in the worst possible way. I was almost near the door when he stabbed the screwdriver in my back. I screamed in pain. I collapsed on the floor and he moved back. He started to laugh hysterically, like we were playing some funny game. He then lifted his pink dress like a princess and started skipping around in a circle while staring at me and singing. Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. While he behaved in this crazy way, I somehow pulled the screwdriver from my back. Seeing this, he ran at me, but this time, I got him. I stabbed him in his cheek, and the screwdriver hung from his cheek like a big-ass piercing. He bled like hell while crying in pain. I slowly took out my phone from my pajama pocket and dialed 911. Being old and severely injured at the same time, the man just sat on the floor holding his bleeding face. I got up and grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter. I raised it to him and warned him with an angry stare. I swear I'll chop your fucking nuts off if you take one step at me. He didn't say anything. He just kept staring like an injured wolf. The cops came and arrested him. They said he was one of the notorious pedophiles who assaulted and murdered 2 young boys in his 30s. He was locked up in a mental institution from where he escaped a week ago. The cops had no idea how he possessed a phone and decided to use Tinder to trap new victims. When the cops were taking him away, he looked at me one last time and said, I will think about rubbing myself to you while sitting in the electric chair. My pretty boy. I'd almost given up on love. After 5 years of pointless scrolling, it was time to face the facts. Girls just weren't interested in nice guys like me. But then a notification popped up one morning. It's a match. Irene had soft eyes and curling brown hair that fell on her shoulders. Her smile was shy, with just a hint of mischief. I thought long and hard about my opening line. It had to be both strike and the proper tone, and make her feel special. Hi, you seem interesting, like someone I'd like to get to know better. Not like all the other girls on here. She replied a few minutes later. That's so sweet of you to say. You seem pretty interesting yourself. Do you live alone? After a flirtatious back and forth, I asked her out to dinner. I'd love to, but I'm working late. I'll be so hungry when my shift ends. If only I knew a handsome gentleman who would cook. I waited almost a full minute before replying, so as not to appear desperate. Why don't you come over to my place? I'm a great cook. Irene replied, sounds good. Boom. Just like that, I had a date. I bought a mop and a vacuum to clean the apartment with, and lit a few candles to set the mood. Irene messaged me at about 10 p.m. I'm outside. She was early. There was no time for a shower, and I couldn't find a single can of deodorant. Luckily, I'd bathed 3 days earlier. Crisis averted. And the CD player, I put on Avatar: The Last Airbender original soundtrack, and then dimmed the lights. I made my way to the front door, stopping at the mirror to straighten my tie, then turned the handle. Whenever I saw Irene, my heart skipped a beat. Her gray-green eyes glimmered like emeralds, and her intoxicating aroma reminded me of a freshly opened pack of Pokemon cards. She was wrapped in multiple layers of clothing, barely showing any skin at all. A rare virtue in a Western woman. Aren't you gonna invite me in? She eventually said. Her voice was confident, yet somehow submissive. I swept my hand across the apartment and tipped my fedora. M'lady. Irene kept her coat on as I guided her towards the dining room. She took a seat at my Secret Lab Omega 2020 series gaming chair, while I sat facing her on a wooden one that the previous owners left behind when they moved out. I asked Irene about her work, her family, and her sexual history. She gave short, curt answers to all of my questions. Periodically, her stomach growled. It was rather unladylike, although I held my tongue. She surveyed the room. Are we alone? Yep, I smiled. Just the two of us. Her eyes focused on mine. Perfect. The way she said it set my heart racing. At one point, I excused myself to begin preparing the meal. Then we resumed chatting. As we talked, Irene propped her head up using her arm and leaned forward seductively. What's that thing? With a gloved hand, she gestured past my left shoulder towards a katana mounted across the wall. Oh, that. It's a Japanese sword, crafted by a master smith in Yokohama, I said. I turned back towards her. If you're lucky, perhaps I'll give you a little demonstration later. A few minutes later, right as I was in the middle of explaining Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life, the microwave dinged. Excuse me? I served Irene's portion first, bowing as I laid it before her. Bon appetit. The Hot Pockets turned out sweet and delectable, a thick celebration of cheese, meat, and vegetables. But while I scoffed mine down, Irene only eyed her plate with disdain. I swallowed a mouthful. Is everything okay? She bit her bottom lip and nodded as her stomach grumbled, even louder than before. I shrugged and continued eating. By the time I was finished, she'd hardly taken a single bite. What's the matter? I asked, a tone of concern in my voice. She rubbed her belly. I'm not really in the mood for... Her voice trailed off as she prodded the Hot Pockets with her fork. I'm in the mood for something else. She stood, circling the computer desk, and gently pressed a finger against my lips. Before I knew it, we were kissing. Irene swung over on my lap. Our tongues acted in perfect synchronization, like Goku and Vegeta performing the fusion dance. Anticipation swelled beneath my cargo shorts. I'd been looking forward to this moment for 36 years. Irene bit my bottom lip, hard. I grimaced with pain and pulled back. Then, a trickle of blood ran down my chins. She gave me a nasty smile, showing a mouthful of curved teeth, and licked her lips with a forked tongue. You taste good. Irene stood and began undressing. For a moment, it appeared as though things were looking up. Although her monstrous teeth were repulsive, I still considered Irene attractive. But then, before my horrified eyes, her clothes fell to the ground. From the neck down, Irene's body was covered with a translucent skin, grotesquely colored, stretched taut over well-defined bones. Bat-like wings spanning no less than 3 times the width of her body expanded. She then pulled off her gloves, revealing long, sharp claws. A set of small, yet perfectly shaped breasts sat atop her chest. My knees trembled as Irene leaned close. Before I could react, her cold claw wrapped around my neck and lifted me from my chair, pinning me against the wall. I made a faint rasp and tried to pry her fingers off my neck. Irene's tongue probed my face as she moaned with what I assumed to be feminine delight. The edges of my vision blurred and my temples started throbbing. Desperately, I felt along the wall, probing for something, anything that could help. My left hand touched something metal, the katana. In one smooth motion, I grabbed it off the wall and angled it downward. The sheath fell onto the floor. Irene's jaw closed around my neck, puncturing my flesh. I screamed, then twisted the blade around and thrust it into her back, right between the shoulder blades. She made a sudden cry of pain and relinquished her grasp. Irene whirled around, shrieking. The blade tore a strip of flesh as... Before I could strike a second time, Irene flapped her wings. The left one collided with my chest, knocking me clean across the table. The jolt of the impact made me groan. Red lines trickled down my neck, stemming from the point where Irene bit me. I scrambled back to my feet, katana in hand. Irene bared her fangs. The computer desk stood between us. "Why, you?" she said with fury. Green blood blossomed on her back. I took several short, quick breaths. "What the fuck is going on here?" I stammered. "Isn't it obvious?" A horrible grin broke out on Irene's face. The end of the blade wobbled in my unsteady hand. She circled to my right. I turned to follow, keeping the desk between us. "I'm here to eat you. I stalk dating sites for horny losers like you, and then I gobble them up." Irene burst forward. A desperate flail of my blade sent her whining back. I gulped. "Gobble up? Just what the hell are you? Explain yourself." Eileen leaned forwards. "It doesn't matter what I am. All that matters is what you are." "Oh?" I said, then gulped. "And what's that?" She grinned. "A fat 36-year-old virgin who's about to be dinner." "Like hell I'm about to be dinner," I shouted. I tried a slash, but Irene jerked back, just out of reach, and the silver blade cut only air. She took another swipe at me. I backstepped. She swiped again and again, finding only the space above the desk. I held my breath and steadied my arms. All I had to do was to watch my opponent for an opening. Each time Irene got ready to strike, her muscles tensed. That was it. The next time her muscles contracted, a delicate stroke sent her fingers flying through the air. She growled like a wounded orc and staggered back. When Irene clutched her hand and squealed, I slipped around the desk, ready to deliver a finishing blow. Her eyes focused on me with murderous intent. With her uninjured hand, Irene lashed out, forcing me backwards. I answered her attacks with strikes of my own. Once, twice, attesting. There was a loud whoosh as Irene spread her wings and flew forward. "No!" I screamed, swinging wildly. The blade cut across her stomach. Anguished wails followed. Irene hit me with a meaty thump, and we both spilled onto the floor. The katana landed between us. We both grabbed for it at the exact moment, me getting there first. I rose. Irene looked up at me, my blade poised, calm and ready. Green liquid pumped out of the deep wound in her stomach. She clutched it with both hands, jaw clenched. She was defeated. We both knew it. Her strength was no match for my prowess. Those countless hours of cutting open bottles of Mountain Dew in my mom's backyard had not been in vain. Irene stumbled to her feet. Glistening green blood and ribbons of taut flesh dangled from where my strikes had connected. I held the katana firm with both hands. Irene's wings collapsed back into her. Then she began pulling on her clothes. Still only half dressed, she made her way towards the door. There, she looked back towards me with a look of utter disdain. I chuckled in response. The door crashed shut behind her. In the bathroom, I unrolled toilet paper and dabbed my wound. I stared at my reflection with pure disbelief. What were the odds that my first date ever would turn out to be a hideous monster? It had undoubtedly been the second worst date of my life. On the counter, my phone chimed. It's a match. Excitement swelled in my stomach. The girl I matched with, Alice, was even more beautiful than Irene. Her skin was like mocha cappuccino, very exotic, very sexy. Sitting down to a feast while the still warm Hot Pockets Irene had forgotten, I sent Alice a message. "Hi, you seem interesting, like someone I'd like to get to know better. Not like all the other girls on here." If I'd known further terrors lay ahead, I would have uninstalled the app right then and there. But like a fool, I didn't. After all, what were the odds of something like that happening again?